Hey, I'm Candid Frank, and he's not Aaron.
Nope.
He's Mark Sagan. Mark is a friend, somebody I worked with here in town and starting a Legion. Very proud of that. And he's a Montreal fan. Now, Montreal fans on this show, we don't see them that often. So he's kind of different. So we're going to get a view from the Montreal side, which why shouldn't we do? They're in the playoffs. The Leafs aren't. So there's not much to talk about as far as the Leafs are concerned. They're making a meal out of hiring a general manager, I think. That's about all we can say about the Leafs. So let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens. And they are a team obviously getting better. There's no doubt about that. And Mark, you must be very proud to be a Montreal fan.
No, absolutely. This year is one of those years where, you just being a Montrealer, being a Montreal Canadiens fan all your life, you feel really proud about that. And, it's one of those things where it's the type of season you dream about all the time, and then you're finally getting it. And especially we had, 3 or 4 years of missing the playoffs there since 2021. So it feels good to be back in the mix again.
Yeah, and for those of you that didn't get a chance to know that we were doing this at 5, I apologize. It was just we had a chance. We also have an important meeting. We have a general meeting at the Legion, and Mark and I need to be there. So we're starting early just to get this in, and then hopefully you'll see it on the replay. So they're playing Tampa, a team that at the end of the year, let's just say they established how much they don't like each other.
That's the understatement of the year. I think that's a big grudge match still from 2021. I think Montreal's still bitter about it. I know I am. I know I'm still bitter about it. But it's good to see some players that are still in the team that were in there from 2021, like Anderson, Dano, Suzuki, Caulfield, Evans, all those guys that are, the veterans on the team. I guess it's funny calling Caulfield a veteran now, right? But veterans on the team, they have that memory of 2021, and you could tell they're playing with heart, trying to beat the one team that knocked them out of the playoff, out of the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, and I want to remind everybody that that was the COVID year. That was the year that there was a Canadian division and the U.S. division. Other than that, right?
Yeah.
So Toronto was a favorite in that season, in that playoff, and Montreal did them in and went on to basically represent the Canadian side in the Stanley Cup final. And it was a bit of a surprise. I think if Montreal this year went to the Stanley Cup, it would be less of a surprise this year than it was back then.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this year's team, I say, I've been saying all year that we're not going to win the cup because our reconstruction is not over yet. But the team, I think now is better than it was in 2021. I think we have a better team. Like in 2021, we really had Carey Price, and that was pretty much all we had. Wade Weber. But generally, we didn't have any 100-point players. We didn't have any 30-goal scorers. Really, we had this team is a much better, even though much younger team. I think it's a much better team than 2021. So I've been saying it all year that I think we're still a year or two away from the Stanley Cup winning kind of team because we're still missing a couple key pieces that are going to be moved in the offseason. Things, guys like Line A and stuff like that are probably going to get moved, and then we're going to get different assets at the same time as we're really grooming our kids down in the AHL and down in the juniors right now and in the college teams. So, I mean, for me, would it be great to get to the Stanley Cup final this year? Absolutely. I mean, I'll take it any day or any year of my life. But realistically, I feel that we're going to get past Tampa Bay, but I don't feel we're going to get past whoever's next. Like I've said it all year, we'll get past round one, but I don't think we'll get past round two. I don't think we've got the I don't think we got the grit. I think we need one or two more guys like Anderson on the team.
Wait a second. What do you mean you don't got the grit?
No.
Are you watching the same hockey games I'm watching, Mark?
No, it's just but you know what? It's people that are out of character doing that, like Slavkovsky, right?
But Mark, that's the point I have for decades talked about the Leafs and their inability to stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
And Montreal is doing it right now. Tampa's the highest penalized team in the league. So for Montreal to rise up against them and the stuff that they're doing says a lot because they're playing Well, the team that gets penalized the most. That means they spend a lot more time in the box doing stuff, right?
Yeah, I think Montreal's probably in the top 5 of most penalized as well, so I think it kind of evens itself out. Now, what I mean by the grid is, I mean, like, we've got players that are just learning how to use their body, like guys like Slafkovsky, right? The guy's 6'5" or something like that. He's just a monster, but he's still young and he's only coming in. He's like, I always say he's looked like a baby giraffe when he first got into the league, and then he's learning how to use his legs. So now he's starting to use his body. But for guys that are really punishing hits on the team, there's not that many guys that do those. I mean, there's Jack Guy, there's Anderson, Gallagher. He's not afraid to get in there in the mix, but he's not playing right now. And other than that, everybody else who's kind of being goonish out there, or somewhat, very much more physical, it's not in their character. They haven't done it all year. So I think, like I always said, like, if I had a guy like Tom Wilson on the Montreal Canadiens, I mean, we'd have the cup almost every year, because there's a guy that you're afraid to go in a corner with. But nobody's afraid to go in a corner with Evans.
Well, Evans has a bit of a reputation too, right? Of being a little tough guy. He's not a huge guy, but he can hit hard.
He's one of the medium ones. I think he's one of the medium ones.
Got a reputation for hurting players.
I'd rather go in a corner with Evans on it than Jack Guy. Let's just say.
Yeah, well, this is a whole different. We're having a total different relationship than I have with Aaron, because Aaron's a pro Maple Leaf fan, and when we talk about the Maple Leafs, we always talk about
the headaches, migraines.
No, the big possibilities, the fact that, they're such a good team. They just haven't proven they're a good team. My point is, with Montreal, they haven't proved they're a bad team yet. Toronto's done that, right?
Yes.
So I disagree with you in the context of, or I agree with you, but I look at it differently, that one thing we learn as hockey fans, and especially people like myself who like getting in deep, right? The one thing I've learned is there's a long history of players who show up for a cup at the kind of age that the Montreal players are showing up at 21, 22. And then they wonder what happened the next 5-6 years. They never get another chance, right? Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, what I'd like to add to what you said is, they're here. They might as well win the cup while they're here. Because that's the way I see it, because as a person who's watched the Leafs very closely and talked about them going back to the late 70s when I had a sports show and talked about the Maple Leafs, I'm saying the same things today that I said back then. The problem isn't for Montreal that they don't have the ability to stand up to not just the other team, but also the officiating. Mm-hmm. Canadian teams get a bit of a rough ride, I believe. And Montreal's a big enough organization, and they're part of the threesome that run the league. And I'm sure they'll get a fair shot. They've got to do whatever they can to win, and they can do it. They could have beat Tampa back then in 21. They just didn't have the amount of talent they needed. To your point, this time it's talent they have, grit they don't have. That time it was grit they had, was talent they didn't have. So This time it's a little different.
It's a little different in the sense that most of the guys, other than playing 5 or 6 games last year, don't have Stanley Cup playoff experience. So for them to change the game from all that ice to no ice at all, like, give you an example, Cole Caulfield, right? I mean, the past 2 games, he's might have had 4 shots total, 5 shots on net in 2 games, which is uncharacteristic for him, and that's because they're not giving him the ice. Also, he's like the smallest kid on the ice, so he's not going to get into that corner and get that puck. So it's a much different game for Cole Caulfield right now in the playoffs against Tampa Bay than it was against Tampa Bay 2 weeks ago. So I think they're going to adapt. I think they're going to win. But like I said, are they Stanley Cup champions? No, not yet. I think we got a lot of money sitting on the bench and sitting up in the rafters that needs to be moved and exchanged for assets that we can actually have on the ice right now. Like guys like Doc gotta go. Guys like I love Anderson. He's a playoff guy, but he's not a regular season guy. So I mean, we could trade Anderson. If we could get rid of Doc, we could get rid of Gallagher. Gallagher's probably he's going to retire. I don't think he's going to go anywhere. I think my prediction is the next couple of years he's going to hang up his skates, if not next year. I think this year's I think he's coming to the realization right now that he's not a spring chicken anymore, and he's been sitting a few days now, and I bet you he's really happy to be sitting just because, well, it's good for the team for one. He's always been a team player, and two, like, man, I'm older than he is, but I mean, playing at 36, 37 years old in the Stanley Cup finals or in the playoffs. It's hard on the body at 22. Could you imagine doing it at 36, 37?
And I think as far as Gallagher is concerned, he can be the wild card in their sleeve, right? So, if they need a little inspiration, if the team looks like it's sagging a little bit, he'd be a good guy to put in the lineup, especially because of the way the rest of the team would feel about it as well.
Well, the way last night's game went, Gallagher would have been perfect because all those scrums behind the net, in front of the net, and in the corners, that's Gallagher territory right there. I mean, there's nobody better other than Marchand in the NHL right now to get under people's skins, and Gallagher is really good at that. So, would he be great on the ice right now? Yeah. Would he be drawing some penalties? Probably. But I mean, he's the kind of the gritty player that I'm talking about that would help the team. And if I was Martin St. Louis, I'd have him on the ice before I'd have Villano.
Wouldn't it be fair to say that going into the playoffs and going in towards the end of the season, when the season started, I don't think Montreal felt they had goaltending, not dependable goaltending. They had a lot of possibility. They had a lot of talent, just not established as really good goaltending. They've come into this playoff with a lot better goaltending than they thought they were going to come in starting at the beginning of the season.
Well, yeah, no, the beginning of the season, the goaltending was just a big mess. But after Christmas, I think it started around February when Dobej really started getting his legs. And then we called up Fowler, and that was pretty much at the end of Montembeault then at that point. Like these are two rookie goalies that are taking a team into the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs and possibly into a second, third, maybe even the finals. Has it been done before? Sure, it's been done before, but it hasn't been done a lot. Let's just say so. I was a firm believer that I still am.
That Ken Dryden.
Yeah, but that's like look at those names. Those are 1970s. I think last one was a 2013. I forget who that was. But anyway,
wasn't Carey Price one of those guys? Didn't he?
But he came in. When did he came? No, he didn't. No, he never won the cup. No,
he never won the cup. But I mean,
but he wasn't a rookie when.
No, he wasn't a winner.
No, I think Patrick Waugh. Was one of them.
Patrick Waugh. So that's who I was thinking. Yeah.
But and I've been saying it all year that Dobej has to be in the conversation for the Calder Trophy, and I mentioned that even before. I think I was the first one to mention it, back because his winning, like his save percentages wasn't the greatest. He wasn't the greatest save percentage, but I mean the team was winning when he was in the net, and that's the mark to me is of a good goalie, because if the players they believe in the guy who's behind them, they're going to play a lot better, and that's what was going on with Dobej over Montembeault. So I mean, he's not going to win the Calder Trophy. I mean, what's his name there? New York's going to get it. Schaefer. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think Demidov had a pretty good season, although he kind of petered out near the end, and so did Kapanen. I don't know what happened with Kapanen in the past month. He just stopped scoring. Like he was a scoring machine in January, February, and in March, April, he just started slowing down.
I think the game starts to tighten up as the season progresses, almost in anticipation of the playoffs, and that's where the real tough part is. And there, where being a rookie is a problem that you really don't understand. You're very clear in suggesting there's a lot less room in the playoffs, but there's also a lot less opportunity to not get pasted against the boards too.
Yeah, exactly.
Aspect of the game in the playoffs is something that is hard to get used to, and it's a real burner. Like it really, like look at Florida. Florida won the cup 2 years in a row, and this year they couldn't get it together.
Yeah.
I think they were just burnt out from 2 very long playoff runs.
Well, injuries, the injuries just killed Florida. Yeah,
they're only human. So that's the one good thing about young players. I'm a firm believer that every team that wants to win a Stanley Cup, whether they're established or not, it's their young players and how well they play in the playoffs that makes the difference, because it's such a drag on. It's a dog eat dog time, and the physical health gets really attacked when it comes to the playoffs.
Right. And this is when games like the last one we had, last two, when games go in overtime, you could tell that the kids have, well, except from the last night Montreal game, but you could tell it advantaged the younger team if it gets into second overtime, third overtime, because they'll just have younger lungs, fresher legs, or younger legs than, say, a more senior team like the Tampa Bay. But we really got, like, we didn't even show up for last night's overtime period. I mean, it was a 0-9 on the shots. It was just I don't know what happened to Montreal. They just kind of went to sleep, and it never woke up.
No kidding. I got to say this though. You've got to appreciate Slavkovsky's bravery, even though Hagel's smaller. Hagel has a big reputation for being a real. You want to talk about Gallagher? Hagel's a guy who's a high-end scorer and he's a real pest, and we could see an example of how much of a pest he could be.
Yeah,
he got Slavkovsky, and Slavkovsky got back up. But I like the fact that he stood up for himself, and this is something for the Leaf fans that watch this show all the time. This is the kind of stuff I keep talking about. If you want to win the cup, if you want to win in the playoffs, you can't worry about losing a fight or losing a battle physically. You got to enter into it, because if you don't defend yourself or be proactive, you're not going to win anything. You got to be able to take the physical abuse. And I got to tell you, Mark, that's the biggest thing that I've seen with Montreal since about the middle of last year. I saw an attitude with that team as far as physicality goes. And that's a key component in my heart to believe that you can win in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, well, Montreal looks like, and it's just the past couple of years, like they look like they're having fun. Like they look like, if you see them in the dressing room, you see them off the ice, you see them on the ice. They're a bunch of young guys that look like they're having fun. They look like they're enjoying the game of hockey. It doesn't to them. It doesn't look like it's a job. It looks like it's something they really enjoy, and that's something you just didn't see with Toronto all year. You haven't seen that from the Leafs all year. These guys were not having fun on the ice. It's almost like they were resentful to be wearing that maple leaf on their jersey, and they just didn't show up every night, which is I mean, it's music to my ears because I'm a Habs fan, but it's disappointing for the Leafs fans. And I always said, like, the Leafs fans, I don't know if they like pain, they must have a pain threshold higher than everybody else.
They don't determine how good the team is, as much as people want to try and suggest that. Leaf fans don't determine it. Here's what I'll say about the Leafs and the Leaf team that they are now, which is why I'm a proponent of trading Austin Matthews and maybe even Nylander. Mm-hmm. You're talking about how they play. Well, right now, Montreal has no bad history. Their players have no bad history. The Maple Leaf players, especially Matthews, Nylander, and Morgan Riley, and those guys, they've accumulated a lot of bad memories, and those bad memories follow you onto the ice.
Yeah.
Whenever you're in a tough situation, because you've lost in so many tough situations, you don't really have the deep down belief that you can overcome winning that seventh game. The Leafs have looked terrible at times, especially under pressure, because they haven't had the players that can play under that pressure. That's what the Montreal team, whether it's this year, next year, the following year, or 5 years from now, what they'll need, the talent they have a great coach, a guy who really motivates his players. He's really a player's coach. He does a great job of making them comfortable, and that fun that you're talking about. He's one of the reasons why they have so much fun. When things go bad, when things don't work out, that's where Montreal, I think, is smarter than Toronto is, and their organization is. I define this by saying that when Montreal, if they have a bad moment next year, they'll bury it, they'll flush it, they'll come out and not worry about it. Now, that's where people blame the media here in Toronto. In Montreal, people don't understand in Toronto. You think the media in Toronto is tough? They've never met the Montreal media. There's nothing to accept, and the fans too. It's unacceptable to not win the cup. Now, I admit, for us Canadians, it's been 23 or 24 years since we won a cup. You got more than that, yeah. 93, right? 90. So we have a lot of reason to think we can't win as Canadians, and Montreal can overcome that. Everybody talks about when you go to watch a game in Montreal, there's nothing like it in the stadium, in the arena. all that kind of stuff. So the glory is waiting for Montreal. And I don't think that organization will let the frustration get in, and they'll make the moves that they need to make. So those questions that you have about not being there yet, this team has at least they're in the playoffs. They're playing Tampa.
Yeah.
Pretty good team, pretty good playoff team. And they're two games that have gone to overtime. Mark, either of those teams could be ahead 2-0.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll see what they do in the next game.
Yeah, and I said I bought into the rebuild. I mean, I drank the Kool-Aid when Kent Hughes says this is going to be a process that's going to take a few years, and let's not rush it. We don't need to rush it. That's why I wasn't really upset when Montreal didn't make any moves at the trade deadline. It's just because there wasn't anything there worth buying for what people were asking. Because I know there was a bunch of questions going around and knives being exchanged and everything like that. It's just Montreal was just turning around and saying, listen, we don't need it. We don't need it right now because we're not necessarily making a push for the finals this year. It'd be great if we could get there, but we're not making that push. They've got a plan in their head that 2 years from now they're going to be a cup contender, maybe even next year soon, depending on what moves they make this summer. And listen, you heard it here from me first, because I've been saying this all year. Connor McDavid is going to be a Montreal Canadian next year at the trade deadline, and I say that because, especially if Edmonton doesn't get past the first round. And I say because
he wants to be a Montreal Canadian.
Now Connor McDavid wants a cup more than he likes money. Okay, that's what he did when he put Edmonton on waivers, pretty much saying, like, unnoticed, saying, listen, I'm only giving you a 2-year contract because if we don't get a cup, if we don't have another chance, I want to go somewhere where he's got a chance. 2 years from now, Montreal is going to be that team. So next year, he's starting his first year of his second contract next year. So it means that at the trade deadline, he'll be tradable. So if Edmonton doesn't make the second round this year, and let's say they just tank next year and they're barely, they're not even going to make the playoffs, or they're just not the team they were, I guarantee you anything that Connor McDavid's going to turn around and say, I want to go to Montreal, and Montreal will give him almost whatever they want, except minus giving him Caulfield, but they'll give him a bunch of picks, because at this point, like, he's not getting any younger. Don't forget, Connor McDavid's not getting any younger. So my opinion is he's going to want to go and get himself another chance at a cup before he retires, because he doesn't want to be retire and be known as the best player in the world to have never won a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, no kidding. Marcel Dion's in that list.
Yeah,
and he was one of the best in his time. One
exactly.
of the best scorers ever. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff they want to try and avoid. Hey, listen, let's move on a little bit. I know you're a diehard Montreal fan, but I do know you have a little bit of understanding and interest in the two other Canadian teams that are playing. And firstly and mostly Ottawa and Carolina. Ottawa doesn't look bad, but they definitely don't look good enough against Carolina.
Well, look, Carolina, they're just a powerhouse of a team. Ottawa is a very streaky team. Like, if Ottawa was on a hot streak, they'd be winning right now. But Ottawa all year has been an up and down kind of team, and right now they seem to be somewhat on a little bit of a down. It doesn't mean that next game they're not going to get back on their up and maybe win 2 more.
They're going to be home. They're going to be at home. So you always have that. The Sens are not hitting as much as Carolina's not a hitting. Well, in my mind, I don't think of them as a hitting team. I think of Ottawa as a hitting team, but they're being out hit. And Ottawa's been a very good defensive team. That's done well for them. Yeah. But just like Montreal, in the playoffs and like other teams, sometimes it's really hard for your stars that normally score to score. But they got to figure out a way if they want to beat Carolina. That's the thing about the Ottawa Carolina series.
Yeah. You're just not seeing the big names really scoring or performing a lot. You're seeing a lot of the third and fourth line playing better than the first and second line. I got Ottawa winning in my Stanley Cup NHL bracket just because I was like, okay, this is going to be my Eastern long shot. I'm going to get Ottawa to beat Carolina, and right now they're not doing me any favors in my bracket. But it's a long series. It's 7 games. It's only 2. They could easily bounce back. If Tkachuk gets on, Tkachuk's a big guy. He's not going to get tossed around too much. So he's able to get in front of the net. He's able to get into the corners. He's not afraid of anybody in the NHL. And so if he starts getting hot, watch out.
And if Ottawa can figure out their game and they're in the other division. So if they win out in their division, they play Montreal. If Montreal wins out in their original division,
right, in the finals, yeah. So what I've got in the Eastern Conference Finals, I got Ottawa and Montreal playing together because in my bracket I had Montreal winning the Stanley Cup, even though I don't believe they're going to make it all the way. But I've got it as Ottawa getting ahead of, and I've got the Flyers winning. So I've got Ottawa getting ahead of Carolina, and then I got them beating the Flyers, and then an all-Canadian Eastern Conference final. That's my bracket. That's what my bracket says anyway. But
and then on the other side, we'll Ottawa to win. We've established what they have to do. What does Edmonton have to do to win? I get, they're playing a team that's not very experienced in the playoffs, a very young team.
Yeah.
And the Oilers have won the first game. They're going to play at 10 o'clock tonight, our time.
Those late games.
Important for Edmonton to win that game to establish control in this series, I think.
That's the key players just have to do what they do. McDavid's got to be McDavid. Draisaitl's got to be Draisaitl. Hyman's got to be Hyman. It's just like these guys have to be who they are. Because if these guys don't show up, I always say that Edmonton doesn't have that much depth on their third or fourth line. Everybody's like in the first and second line. So but they got to get the goaltending too.
That's the thing that they've struggled with over the past few years is goaltending.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing how Montreal has that's just coming out the wazoo. Good for Edmonton. So Edmonton, if they can win, then maybe they make it out of there, and we see an all-Canadian final, Montreal and Edmonton. That would be a really interesting final when one looks at it from a historical perspective.
Yeah, you know what? That'd be the dream, the Edmonton-Montreal final. But I don't have that in my bracket. I got Colorado going all the way just because, Colorado ended up with, 114 points or 116. I don't think anybody in the Western Conference could beat Colorado right now.
The way they looked in that game, they looked like they were in trouble a little bit, but then they won the game in overtime. For me, Edmonton can do it. Just because of the two guys they got. Draisaitl back from an injury, give him some time. Right now he's working on adrenaline and he's going to have to get to play the game a little more to be in shape and or mentally prepared to play in the playoffs. So I want to see, I'm a bald-faced Canadian supporter. It doesn't matter if the team's in Canada, I want them to win. Then the only time it becomes a concern for me and a tough choice is if Ottawa and Montreal end up in the Eastern final. Then it's a toss-up. Then I know one of them's going to make it. So yeah, I'd like to see that. That'd be great to see Edmonton. Really, of all the players in the National Hockey League that I want to see win a Stanley Cup, there's nobody more than McDavid I want to see win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah,
storyline-wise, right? And deservedly so. Like you said at the top, this is a guy that it's not about money, it's about winning. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't just say it. We got a lot of people like Matthews, Marner here in Toronto. Oh, I want to be a Maple Leaf. I want to win a cup. I want to do whatever it is to win a cup. But you're going to pay me more money than I deserve. Okay. Yeah.
I'll drain your bank account so you can't get any other players. But I'll give you a cup. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the other thing, that it's going to get tougher. It's going to get tougher for Montreal. Because once the contracts and players start saying what they want, this is the problem that you have, Mark, that as a Montreal fan, you got to hope before the contracts start getting signed that this team does something. Because one thing's for sure, once teams win the Stanley Cup or get close, it doesn't matter whether they win or get close, those players get paid. And that's when the problems start, because then the money starts to run out in the budget.
Yeah. Don't get me started on salaries, because I've always said it should have been a performance-based kind of salary, just like they do in golf. If you play good, you get paid. If you don't play good, you don't. But that's a whole other hour show.
Well, no, you and I agree. I believe in the 1-year contract. Yeah. I believe in the 1-year contract. It doesn't matter where the players go. 1-year contract. What you do, that's what you get paid for.
These guys would never unpack their luggage. They'd be moving every year.
That's the way. But if they really care about playing for a certain city or a certain team, like some of them say, look, you talk about Anderson. He's a Montreal fan from the West, big Montreal fan, they showed Tavares here, Toronto, as a young boy sleeping in maple leaf bed sheets.
Yeah.
Anderson did the same thing as a kid. He wanted to be a Montreal Canadian. So I don't know if I'd get rid of a guy like that, but I leave you as the Montreal expert here to make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like I think he's getting old. I think Gallagher, Anderson, those guys, they're just getting old, and they're like I said, Anderson. I love Anderson because Anderson's playing the same way he did in 2021 playoffs cup run right now.
Scary.
He was really good. He scored a lot of key goals. He was there when you needed him in 2021, and then he kind of disappeared the past 3 years. But now he's coming back. The past 2 games, he's been a monster. He's got 2 goals, and he's just doing what Anderson does. So. Is this a guy that I would keep on the 4th line all year just to keep him for the playoffs? Sure, I would. But I would get rid of guys like Veleno first. I would get rid of Carrier. He's too small. I would start getting some bigger, beefier guys with some talent. But Montreal's got the advantage right now that they've got the cap space. Like they're going to get rid of Laine this summer, and that's going to free up a whole bunch of money. And then next year's and other contracts are coming due. And then, so they're going to have to find money to sign Demidov. They're going to have to find money to sign Kapanen if they're going to keep Kapanen. I don't think they're going to keep Kapanen. No, I think they're probably going to move him.
Find out, and it's serious stuff. We're going to find out how serious the players on the Montreal Canadiens want to win. And Toronto fans who watch this program will understand what I'm saying, and that is, depending on how much they want to get paid, we're going to find out in Montreal. There might be a different story. I joked with Toronto fans, and I got in trouble with it. I'd say I'd trade Matthews for Suzuki any day. 2 reasons. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, Matthews is working on being a great defensive center. Well, Suzuki's already a great defensive center. Mm-hmm. And Suzuki's earning half of what Matthews is earning. So that to me is what matters. It's the cap space is so important. Being able to afford depth, because that's where the cap is a struggle. Yeah. It's easy to pay a guy $13 million, but it's hard to get other decent players after you're paying those guys that kind of money.
Yeah, if you want a masterclass on rebuild right now, you just look at Kent Hughes for the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, do you suspect, like, was there a phone call from Toronto to Kent Hughes and saying, hey, listen, name your price, come on to Toronto and we'll give you whatever you want and try and rebuild this team? I mean, I don't know if that phone call happened, but I'm sure somebody was thinking about it, because when you're looking at master classes on rebuilding a team right now, Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon right now are just, they're at the top of the list.
They are a twosome doing a job that requires 2 people, but they have to be symbiotic. And they're both symbiotic. They both work well together. There's, I don't know how the relationship works, to be honest with you, but I do know what the result is. And I think the result speaks for itself. Like, you get all these experts, and I'll be an expert and explain why I think Montreal's management team works really well. But to be honest with you, I don't have a clue other than to say they've drafted really good players. They hired a coach that people wondered about, a rookie. He was coaching kids before.
Pee-wee. Yeah, he was coaching Pee-wee.
Right?
Yeah,
he was coaching Pee-wee, and they've made the right decisions. But a lot of times, Mark, I'm a firm believer that decision A looks really good because of decision B, and decision A and B look really good because of decision C. And the problem with the Leafs is they can't make that good second decision.
Well, it's because the second decision, they have no leverage on the second decision. That's the problem with what's going on with Toronto, is that they have no leverage on any kind of second decision. So they made the first decision, I don't know, out of impulse or not. But I'm like you. I mean, I don't think I would get rid of both Marner and Nylander. I would get rid of one. All right. I would sit them both down and say, listen, are you happy here? Would you be happier somewhere else? Because I could make it happen. And that would free up a lot of money, where you could get 2-3 guys for that kind of money, of the money they're getting, especially Matthews. But I think, like, to me, Nylander was a much better hockey player this year than Matthews was.
Well, that's what we're talking about. That's where you and I will agree. Right. And right now, the biggest problem with the Leafs, to talk about the Leafs, is generating offense, generating margin of play. Matthews isn't that guy. He's a trigger guy. He's not a creator of offense. Nylander can. I'm not a big fan of Nylander and his commitment to the game every game, but he, at least when he's out there and he wants to, he can create
Yeah.
offense.
Yeah. He's a points per game guy. Yeah.
Matthews is not. Matthews is a finisher. And that's not to say that's a bad thing, but you can get a guy like Stamkos for 8-9 million, and he's a finisher. He's doing well this year, but when he first left Tampa, and this is what makes Tampa a good team, they walked away from Stamkos. Stamkos was their captain and their best player. And they said, nope, we're done with you because of how much money you want.
Yeah.
In the story. That's why he's gone. He wanted X, he got X, and he wasn't in their minds worth it. And I felt the same way about Matthews before he signed that contract. And I felt the same way about Marner, for the reason that because they both wanted the kind of money they wanted, they opted the other one out of town because one of them had to go. They couldn't have had both Matthews and Marner.
Yeah, no, the issue with Toronto is that they offered him so much money and they have no move clauses. So the big thing that's killing them right now is the no move clause. And then, well, like I said, they offered him too much money where they can't pay anybody else to back them up, where they ended up with scraps. So what was it, like a couple of years ago? The top four, the core four, were taking up 50% of the salary space. I mean, you can't have a team like that.
They were also three of the highest paid players in the league.
Yeah.
Three of the five highest players in the league were Maple Leafs, were the core four guys, the core three guys, really.
Yeah.
And core four. But anyway, that's the problem. When you're paying that much money, you're not paying it anywhere else. And anywhere else can be really important, especially at this time of the year.
Yeah. And this is something Montreal kind of shined on, is that they convinced their players to sign for, say, smaller amounts, like say $8-9 million range in long term. And because they did like they did to me, they sold them the Kool-Aid, say, listen, if we pay you, we could pay you $14 million, Suzuki, but you know what? You're not gonna have anybody to back you up. We're gonna have to sell Caulfield, or we're gonna have to sell Slavkovsky because we can't afford that. So I think it's the management team that could actually sit down and have conversations with these guys in their age and say, listen, you're still young. Do you want the money or do you want a cup, right? Do you want to worry about money later and do you want a cup now, or vice versa? Because eventually you're going to choose one or the other.
And this is a guarantee I'll make you. If those players don't play ball with the team will trade them.
Yes.
And that's the difference between Montreal and Toronto. That's the difference between any winning team in Toronto, is that the players don't run the team. The organization does. The organization is, like they say, when they say about you play for the emblem in the front, not the name in the back. Well, with the Leafs, the name in the back has too much prominence in the way they operate. And that's bad.
Yeah. Too much power in the players' hands, and like I said, Montreal. Well, Toronto should be like that, but Montreal's got no problems with getting rid of you if you're not a team player. Like Peterson out in BC, he's available, but nobody wants to touch him. Like, would he fit in Montreal? Absolutely not. Was he a good player? Absolutely yes. Would you think Montreal made a move on him at all at the deadline? No, not at all. They're like, no fucking way. Oh, excuse me, no way.
It's not at the end of the day, when you have an understanding of the game of hockey, when you understand the game of hockey, there are moves you don't make. And that I believe, it remains to be seen. Will Montreal make those moves that, if you understand hockey at all, you don't make? Will they make one of those moves? We watched the Leafs make the same bad move over and over and over again. The core four problem was they had a weak foundation, or they were missing parts, and they tried building the foundation up with guys they brought in, when the guys who should be the foundation, Marner, Matthews, Tavares, and Nylander, they all look the same. They're all the same player. They're offense only. That's all they are. They're offense only. They're not players that play well in the playoffs because they lack the backbone. And when you have your 50% of your salary taken up by guys who don't know how to play aren't willing to play the way you have to in the playoffs, the result is predictable. It's not a surprise.
Yeah. Toronto now needs in my opinion, they need a rebuild, not a retool, because the rebuild they did, and they started, back in 2014, 2015, they started this rebuild. Listen, this is 10, 11 years later. It didn't work. Like, what are you retooling? What are you retooling? You're retooling a team that's broken. I think a rebuild needs to happen. They need to get rid of some key players.
I get you. What really you're saying is a restructure. Like, and the way like for the way hockey is today, it's about money, right? So if you can get rid of Matthews and his contract and not eat any money, not keep any money, and get decent picks for him, you're ahead of the game. In my opinion, you're ahead of the game. Yeah. Because now that's where the restart happens. Retool, all those funny words. I'll be more specific. They're assets, and it's about asset management. If Matthews is an asset, they should cash in that asset. If Matthews gives them a hard time, then he is what he is. He is what he's always been, only worried about himself. Yeah. So at the end of the day, the Leafs have to say, you're an asset. We want you, and tell them, hey, look, you know full well every time we go into the playoffs, the pressure on you is unfair. So that's the way I would pitch it, Tim. You need to go somewhere else for your own good, not for only for our good, but for your good too.
But the problem with Toronto is that those are the only assets that they're worth anything right now. So I mean, if they're going to make any moves on changing anything, why would you change a third liner for another third liner? Like, you want to change your top, like change your top guy and get two first or second liners. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta build up. Anyways, for me, the rebuild, it needs to happen. But to quote my show's partner, if you're going to start rebuilding that and you build it, you break it down to the studs, you're just going to find a lot of mold.
Yeah, well, hopefully not for Leaf fans' sake. Well, Mark, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, hey, it's my pleasure. It's great to be here.
Okay, he's Mark Sagan. I'm Candid Frank Stanishi. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time on Friday. See you then.